Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gorilla Whale, a Godzilla watch-along podcast. I am your kaiju consultant, Kevin Carpenter.
And I am an animation model with only animation on the head up, not on the body. Kayla Knutson. I forgot to say my name.
Slightly more detailed than the rest of the background.
This is the first time we are doing this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
This is take one for sure.
Yeah, we totally didn't have any technical difficulties and lost like 10 minutes of recording. Not 10 hours.
10 hours?
Yeah, I do a lot of cutting on these episodes.
There's a 10-hour-long podcast.
We actually talk for 10 hours and I cut all the important bits down to 1 hour. It takes me forever.
About one single Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Speaking of, so, folks, we hit a milestone. We have finished the Showa era of Godzilla, from Godzilla to the terror of Mechagodzilla. And so normally, we would move on to the beginning of the Heisei era with the return of Godzilla, aka Godzilla, aka Godzilla 1984, aka Godzilla 1985, depending on when and where you were watching it.
That's too many titles.
It's also a bit of a Halloween H2O situation where the first movie happened, but all the rest of the movies didn't happen. So it's kind of a reboot, except the first Godzilla happened.
So it's a Halloween 2018 situation.
Yes. No, they've done that multiple times with the Halloween franchise, and
they'll do it again.
And we'll cover that in our next podcast.
No.
It would be a much shorter podcast, that's for sure. So, folks, before we get to the beginning of the Heisei era of Godzilla, something happened in between Terror of Mechagodzilla and the Return of Godzilla. And that is a little-known cartoon that hit the United States. The Godzilla Power Hour, a.k.a. Godzilla, a.k.a. Hanna-Barbera's Godzilla. And also a couple of different titles because they would mix the Godzilla cartoon with another cartoon. So sometimes it would be like the Godzilla Hong Kong Phooey Power Hour. But for the purposes of this episode, we are going to be calling it the Godzilla Power Hour or Hanna-Barbera's Godzilla. Everyone cool with that? Everyone all right? Awesome.
I feel like they did a lot of crossovers. Hanna-Barbera. I feel like they did a lot of crossovers back in the day.
They did a lot of crossovers. These crossovers were less, like, it wasn't like a crossover in the storyline. It was more of a, like, all right, here's the Godzilla cartoon, and coming up next is the Hong Kong Phooey cartoon, or the Harlem Globetrotters cartoon, or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see. So they're like, it's the Godzilla hour, because they're only half hour. I understand now.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yep. So, before we begin, Kayla, what was your favorite Hanna-Barbera cartoon?
Scooby-Doo.
Hell yeah.
All Scooby-Doos, hands down. I was
Immediate
a huge Scooby-Doo
answer.
kid. I was very normal.
That is something normal people say.
I was very normal about Scooby-Doo as a child.
I was a big Captain Planet fan. One, because I liked the concept.
I also like Captain Planet.
Yeah. Well, I like the concept of all these, like teenagers having power rings that they could use to control the elements. Mm-hmm. But also I love that every episode Captain Planet would show up and he'd be like, hey, kids, recycle. And then he'd pick up the villain of the week and just smash him through a mountain.
Yeah. I became a terror in my household, running around, turning off all of the lights, yelling at my parents for running the water too much. The propaganda worked. I was a huge Captain Planet fan. Captain Planet, Scooby-Doo, obviously, all of the Scooby-Doos. But I did watch, like, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? The original one all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The Flintstones. I think there was, like, Johnny Quest. The ones that were on, like, the ones that were running when we were kids or, like, running new episodes, like Dexter's Lab, Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo.
Big Johnny Bravo
Cow
fan.
and Chicken, which Cow and Chicken was an odd one.
Yep.
As you've mentioned. Yeah.
When did I mention that, Kayla?
Definitely.
Did I mention it in lost footage?
in an absolutely organic conversation that we've had in the past. There was also, I mentioned Flintstones. What was the other one? Was it Super Friends?
I think Super Friends was Hanna-Barbera, yeah. That was the one where it was the DC superheroes, but they didn't call themselves the Justice League. They were the Super Friends.
Yeah. There was that one. And then there was, where's the fucking Wikipedia list? I just had this up. Oh, list of works produced by Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Yogi Bear, Jetsons, like 6 different Johnny Quests. I watched a lot of them.
Well, while we're going down memory lane with our love of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, it's time to also go down the historical context road. So, Godzilla Power Hour, historical context. Henry G. Saperstein was an American film producer and distributor who used his father's inheritance to invest in the film and TV industry. Henry specialized in buying properties and merchandising the hell out of them. After buying the UPA, or United Productions of America, in 1960, Henry Saperstein would strike up a professional relationship with Toho to distribute their monster movies in America. If you recall our episode on Invasion of Astro Monster, Henry was responsible for American actor Nick Adams appearing in the movie as the astronaut Glenn, and he also had a hand in producing 2 other kaiju films, Frankenstein vs. Baragon and The War of the Gargantuas. One day, Henry receives a call from Joseph Barbera of the animation giant Hanna-Barbera. According to the book, Japan's Favorite Monstar, the unauthorized biography of the Big G, Mr. Barbera stated, quote, "My job back then was to dig up new characters, new ideas, new shows, and I had wanted to do Godzilla for a while. So I contacted Henry Saperstein, who was a very good friend, and we got talking about it. Then, there was an executive at the network who wanted to get into the act and urged us to lighten the storyline up." Yep. So I came up with the character Godzuki, who was like his son. The show had a sort of father-son relationship, which we had done before on shows like Augie Doggy and Johnny Quest, end quote.
He's Scrappy-Doo.
Yeah. Very funny to me that Joseph
He's
Barbera
fucking Scrappy-Doo.
Very funny to me that Joseph Barbera was like, yeah, so I came up with this character that was like, what if Godzilla had a son? Totally original concept. No one had done that.
You mean Miniella?
No. This is Godzuki.
Who's Miniella? Yeah, also love that at this time, Japan is putting out all of these super silly Godzilla movies for children. But apparently they, what's his face? NBC hadn't seen it. Right? Or, yeah, NBC. So NBC said, lighten it up, you know, because they're familiar apparently with only the atomic bomb existential threat version of Godzilla and not the wrestler that does manga meme poses.
Well, even then, there were completely different standards for children's media in Japan versus children's media in America. And we touch on that a little bit in our bonus episode for the TV series Zone Fighter, which also featured Godzilla. In that show, someone straight up picks up a gun and shoots an alien right in the face. Oh boy.
As they should.
You can check out that bonus episode, by the way, by going to our Ko-fi, link in the show notes. Anyway.
Okay, sorry. When I say as they should shoot an alien, I don't mean that we should, on principle, shoot all aliens that visit planet Earth. I mean that the alien had it coming.
Yeah, when the aliens are trying to do...
Watch the bonus episode for context.
That's the only way you're going to get the context, folks.
You're trying to make me say Coolsville sucks.
Little does Kayla know, I edit the podcast.
When I say as they should shoot an alien, I mean that we should, on principle, shoot all aliens that visit planet Earth. Coolsville sucks!
Oh, fuck. I'm gonna get canceled.
Unfortunately, while Mr. Barbera wanted to do a straight adaptation of the Godzilla films, NBC would not allow it. Barbera stated, quote, "When they start telling you in standards and practices, don't shoot any flame at anybody, don't step on any buildings or cars, then pretty soon they've taken away all the stuff that he represents." That became the problem. To maintain a feeling of Godzilla and at the same time cut down everything that he did, end quote. That wouldn't be the only thing that changed. Godzilla was transformed in this version to be as big as he had ever been. He was also green, looked more like a dinosaur, breathed fire instead of atomic energy, shot lasers out of his eyes, and his signature roar was replaced with voice actor Ted Cassidy screaming into a microphone.
His design looks so much like Reptar.
No, it is a one-to-one inspiration. Reptar's design looks like NBC's Godzilla.
Yeah, absolutely. It was shocking. It was, as somebody who watched a lot of Rugrats, it was very surprising to see. I had never seen, obviously, the Godzilla Hanna-Barbera. That was not on the Boomerang reruns. So he popped up and I was just like, Raptor?
I need you to know, I told my fiance's father, so my future father-in-law, about the Godzilla podcast I was doing, and his immediate response was, "Oh yeah, Godzuki." So this was his frame of context for Godzilla. Was
incredible.
Was the Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Wonderful. I love that.
By the way, quick bit of trivia. The voice of Godzilla, Ted Cassidy, also played the butler Lurch in the original Addams Family, the big Frankenstein-looking guy.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine Lurch's groans,
Nice.
And you've got Godzilla's roar. It's like a roar kind of thing instead of the signature screonk.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's where it sounds familiar.
Despite all the changes, Hanna-Barbera would release their Godzilla cartoon in an hourly block with other cartoons like Jaina of the Jungle and Hong Kong Phooey. And so, on September 9th, 1978, the first episode of the Godzilla animated series would release. The episode's title, The Firebird.
Bum.
So, any thoughts before I get into the summary?
I don't think so. It felt like a very... As I was watching this, I was like, yeah, this is a Hanna-Barbera cartoon from the 70s.
Yep.
I've seen this film before.
Yep. No, it's so fascinating to me because you look at some of the older Hanna-Barbera cartoons, especially the less popular ones, and it's like they were plagiarizing themselves. The amount of Scooby-Doo clones that were out there. It's just like, we got that formula. Let's just keep running into the ground.
Well, the funny thing about Scooby-Doo is that it was kind of a... Scooby-Doo was a little bit of a clone of other shows and, like, media, like, books and stuff that was happening at the time. Like, they were all fulfilling these tropes that already existed. But somehow, between the design and then when they really, like, got going, they just ended up making something better than the sum of its parts, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it took off like a rocket. Like, it was... Scooby-Doo very easily could have been one of the lesser Hanna-Barbera cartoons. I think there's some fascinating video essays out there on YouTube right now. If you guys just type in, like, Scooby-Doo video essay, that will go into the history of Scooby-Doo. It's a good way to spend a Friday night.
Yeah, that's something to do during our podcast, is recommend, hey guys, stop here, listen to something else for a little bit.
Don't stop. Go after.
Finish the podcast.
When you finish this podcast, listen. You're probably in the middle of chores or driving, so you can't go watch something else because you're busy. So when you're done with this, go watch Scooby-Doo videos. We don't have any, so I can't give you any of our Scooby-Doo videos to watch.
Well, we do have a little bit of Scooby-Doo coming up in the next, like, minute or so, but Godzilla Power Hour, Episode 1, The Firebird. We open on the Godzilla cartoon intro. Up from the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, his head in the sky. Godzilla, 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 and Godzuki. They draw that last one out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I messed that one up. You'll have to take out my line there.
No worries. We're on like a second delay anyway, so I had to sing purposefully out of sync with you. So let's see if it lines up in the edit. Yes, Godzilla is now accompanied by a smaller kaiju about the size of a minivan named Godzuki. Godzuki is round, has little arm wings he uses to fly around, and is voiced by Don Messick, the original voice of Scooby-Doo.
And you can tell.
That was a little bit of Scooby-Doo stuff coming up. I really wanted to get that out there. Yeah, Godzuki kind of talks like a kind of thing.
Yeah, he doesn't have half words the way that Scooby does, and yet it does seem like the humans are capable of communicating with him.
They touch on that a little bit. They're like, no, we don't know what he's saying. We just kind of infer what he means.
Which is theoretically what's happening with Scooby-Doo, but like, we can understand Ruh Roh, Raggy. Like, Scooby-Doo is speaking English, which is why later on they're like, actually, he's part alien. Which I don't know if I agree with that canon.
Yeah, the Scooby-Doo lore starts to get into some weird stuff, and I'm cutting off the Scooby-Doo talk here. Godzilla.
I didn't say anything else.
Godzilla follows around the crew of the research vessel Calico, with its manly captain Carl Majors, token woman Dr. Quinn Darien, token black man Brock Borden, who is now the first black man to appear in the Godzilla franchise, not counting the Pacific Islander blackface.
Not counting blackface.
Yeah. Well, that's Pacific Islander blackface, so even then. And blonde teenager Pete, who is best friends with Godzuki. Captain Carl Majors has a gadget that he can use to summon Godzilla whenever they need his help, which is a little demeaning for the king of the monsters, but whatever. Moving on.
No, Captain Carl Majors is a very cool, manly man, and Godzilla is always willing and able to help him.
Exactly.
Because he's cool and manly.
It's never explained, by the way, why Godzilla follows these people around. Which is phenomenal.
It's so funny, like, how... It's just, I'm like, it's the same cast that you've seen in dozens of cartoons. It's so funny.
It's Johnny Quest if they had a Godzilla.
Yeah, it is. It's literally just Johnny Quest.
By the way, if I had a Godzilla button, like if I had a little gadget on my belt, it's like press this big red button to summon Godzilla, I would not be responsible with it. I could not handle that power.
What if you call him too much and he gets pissed and he changes his number?
Right?
I feel like I'd overthink it. I would never call him.
Oh no, I would be stuck in traffic and then someone would cut me off and I'd just look at the button and be like,
You'd be like, get this guy.
Take him out.
Oh my god. When do you think they're going to make a Johnny Quest movie?
Anyway. In the first episode, The Firebird, a pair of scientists witness a dormant volcano suddenly erupt. Out of the volcano comes a giant, fiery pterodactyl who is definitely not Rodan. NBC couldn't get the rights to any of the other kaiju, so here's the Firebird, not
Legally
Rodan.
distinct Firebird.
The crew of the Calico answer the scientist's distress call. On the way, young Pete plays hide-and-seek with Godzuki. Then, a tidal wave shoots toward the ship. Captain Major summons Godzilla, who lifts the entire ship out of harm's way with one hand. It should be noted that Godzilla is never consistently the same size in this series.
No.
And sometimes he can fit a few humans in his hand, and other times he can lift an entire research vessel, because fuck staying on model.
Oh yeah, no. Hanna-Barbera is not concerned with such things.
The crew of the Calico arrive at the island and save the scientists before they can be killed by lava. Worried that whatever caused the volcano to erupt could cause even more eruptions and tidal waves, the crew investigate in helicopters and hovercrafts. Even though the Firebird emerges from the top of the volcano multiple times, the crew is still like, we should investigate more, and decides to walk into a cave toward the core of the volcano. Pete and Godzuki are originally left behind, but that rascal Godzuki follows the crew anyway.
Oh, Godzuki.
Oh, Godzuki. God. Is it weird that I like Godzuki more than Manila?
I 100% like Godzuki more than Manila. Absolutely. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry to the Manila lovers. I don't know how the fandom feels about Godzuki. I like him. And it's because I was primed to like Scrappy-Doo as a child.
You know, that might be it. I think we were trained on Scrappy-Doo. We were inoculated.
It's literally the thing about, literally watching this, I was just like, because I've seen so many Hanna-Barbera cartoons when I was growing up, and they are all the same. I liked this probably as much as people that liked Son of Godzilla when they watched it when they were a kid. Like, that's what it was. This is my Son of Godzilla.
I think I like it because Godzuki looks more like a weird pterodactyl Godzilla kind of. Like, he has a unique design, while Manila's unique design, as I said before, looks like a frog in a microwave.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. I think it's a slightly better design.
Yeah.
It's also, I mean, to be fair, this is a different medium. It's not a suit. It's a hand-drawn animation, etc., etc. Like, it's probably easier for the design to be, I mean, they have to hand animate everything or whatever because there's no computer shit in it yet. But still, I mean, like, I get it.
Inside the volcano, the crew comes face to face with the Firebird, not Rodan. Put that name away. We don't have that copyright. Not Rodan, the Firebird. We then have a dialogue I need to highlight. Dr. Quinn says, "A living creature actually existing in that mass of molten rock." To which Manly Man Captain Majors responds, "Would you scientific types forget about your work? It looks like that thing's got wings."
What?
What? Huh?
What does that mean? You're more astonished by the wings than the fact that this thing can live in molten rock?
But also, how was that like a scientific thing?
Listen, all of the good writers were busy with Scooby-Doo.
It's like they really needed Captain Majors to be like, these eggheads who I follow around on this research vessel.
That's the trope.
That's the trope, but they couldn't figure out what he could actually say, so he just said some random shit.
It's 1978. Han Solo just came on the scene a year before. So when we are looking for ship captains that are ferrying around these adventurers getting into shenanigans, we're looking at a Han Solo heavy archetype, you know? I mean, Han Solo is like an archetype for sure. Like, everybody in Star Wars is an archetype.
It's just so weird. Like, I can understand if he said, like, would you get your head out of your work? We need to get out of here, like, kind of thing. Like, we gotta focus on the practical stuff. But him to be like, you're so obsessed with observing that it's in lava, you didn't even notice the wings.
It's weird.
It's a really weird moment. Moving on.
It shouldn't have gotten from draft to animation. I don't know.
Moving on.
I said I liked it. I didn't say it was well written.
Pete and Godzuki find the crew on the other side of a massive fissure of magma. Godzuki flies Pete over to the rest of the crew, and together, all of them run out, even though their way was sealed off earlier by falling rock, but we're just going to ignore that. The crew then escape on the Calico, right as the Firebird emerges from the volcano. Captain Majors summons Godzilla once more, this time to fight the Firebird. The Firebird hits Godzilla with wavy lines that are meant to imply heat, but can't be fire because of 1970s American cartoon standards.
It's a heat ray.
Godzilla fires his eye lasers in response. You know, the Godzilla eye lasers.
Yes, of course, the Godzilla eye lasers, which were always canonical.
The Firebird lifts...
Atomic breath? I don't know her.
The Firebird lifts Godzilla in the air and drops him, and Godzilla smacks the Firebird with his tail. But as rocks fall under Godzilla's feet, Godzilla falls off a cliff into the ocean. The Firebird then flees into the Arctic North. The crew believe that the Firebird, who lives in molten magma, is migrating to the freezing north to lay eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Well,
yeah.
We can't let its natural reproductive cycle happen based off no evidence whatsoever. Not even another Firebird.
No.
Dr. Quinn hypothesizes that the world might fall under the mercy of millions of Firebirds.
This could escalate real quickly. Perhaps I was doing some work for the cartoon, but I thought that it was kind of like, oh, it's gonna go melt the ice caps. Like, that's the danger. Like, it's hot and it's fiery and it'll melt the ice caps. And I was like, oh, an environmentalism message in my Godzilla Hanna-Barbera cartoon? Nice. Because, like, Hanna-Barbera has a history of pro-environmentalism, stuff.
Yeah, Captain Planet.
No, that was Captain Planet, which is after this, but, like, I mean, Scooby-Doo has, like, environmentalist stuff happening because it's all about taking down greedy corporate people that, I mean, they're mostly doing real estate scams, but I'm sure that there's, like, pollution shit in there, too. Anyway, no, that's not what was going on. It was not that well written.
Natural reproductive cycle of the Firebird. The Firebird is apparently an asexual kaiju who can lay millions of eggs at once.
Yeah, it does. The volcano, by the way, is in Alaska. Like, at the very beginning, they're like, do you think that our seismic reader is going to go off? And they're like, no, we're in Alaska. All of these volcanoes are super dormant, which I'm like, I don't think that's how Alaska works. Alaska's on, like, the ring of fire. I mean, I'm fairly sure that they get earthquakes. I guess. I don't know. I didn't study Alaska's geology that closely.
I like how you're
But then immediately the volcano erupts.
I like how you're bringing up this scientific inconsistency. One, when you don't know that much about volcanoes. And two, for the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoon.
I did my second grade science fair exhibit on volcanoes, so I do know something about volcanoes.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I was in the presence of an expert.
You're in the presence of a budding, an amateur volcanologist. That was one of the, you know when you're a kid though, and you're like, I'm gonna be a scientist. That was one of the types of scientists that I was interested in being. Was a volcanologist. I forgot a lot of the knowledge that I learned then. But anyway, my point is, like, they're already in Alaska, which is so close. Like, it's in the almost in the Arctic Circle. So maybe that's why he went up to the Arctic Circle. But again, you know, they're the ones that put it in Alaska anyway. Who's to say? It's not that well written. Don't think about it that much.
Yeah. It's just a little weird that the bird that lives in magma reproduces by laying its eggs in the Arctic North. But okay, sure.
Yeah. No, it's odd.
Godzilla is summoned once more to fight the Firebird. Godzuki also helps by flying in front of the Firebird and kinda distracting him. Like, he tries to, like, grab the Firebird's tail, and then the Firebird just kind of wallops him with the tail a little bit.
He's helping.
Yeah, he's helping.
He's helping.
With all that help, Godzilla then takes Godzuki and places him somewhere safe and continues the actual fight, which is, I think, more affection than Godzilla showed Manila.
Yeah.
In the original movies.
Hanna-Barbera Godzilla is a better father than Toho Godzilla. Or Minilla is the lesser favored son. He is the Ishmael to Godzuki's Isaac.
That's the fight I want to see one day. Manila versus Godzuki.
Yeah.
Who wins? Who is marginally yet less useless?
Godzuki.
Yep. At least Godzuki can fly.
Godzuki is demonstrably semi-capable in fights.
Godzilla and the Firebird end up in the freezing ocean. As the Firebird escapes into an underwater cave, both Godzuki and Godzilla pile up boulders at the cave's entrance, trapping the Firebird inside. And that's how the Firebird is defeated. The world is saved. Yeah! We can't throw a punch.
It drowns.
It drowns.
The implication is that it drowns, which is definitely not nearly as violent or gruesome as punching it into submission.
No, they just trap it in an underwater Arctic North cave, and then it's just like, all right, that's it. We're good. They can't break out. Yep. There's not another entrance to this cave. We're good.
No, it's solid.
We end with Godzuki flying back to the Calico and clumsily landing too fast. As Pete berates the goofy kaiju, we end on a shot of Godzuki on a tiny raft being pulled by the Calico because he's not allowed on the ship anymore. Roll credits. So, Kayla, what'd you think?
This is incredible. This was a work of art. I don't understand how I never knew of this before now. I feel like this should have been enshrined, perhaps, in the Library of Congress.
Well, it is available on the official Godzilla by Toho YouTube channel. Like, people at Toho were like, no, this needs to be preserved and freely available.
It's Hanna-Barbera is an American institution. It is a piece of entertainment history. They are one of the most influential animation studios in the world. May they rest in peace.
Yep.
Mostly influential because of Scooby-Doo, but this is obviously also a work of art.
Well, yeah, like I said earlier, this is a pretty one-to-one inspiration for Reptar and Rugrats. Like, I don't think we would have had Reptar without the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla.
Yeah, at least not the design. I mean, I guess you could argue that we would have anyway, but the design being so close really does imply that probably not, you know?
I think it's also very interesting that with the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla, Godzilla is a force that can be controlled. Like, Godzilla can be called upon at a moment's notice by this research vessel to fight monsters. And, yeah.
Yeah, he's like he's a little like tame, I guess. I don't know. He's drawn in a fashion that is menacing and intimidating, but not like, yeah, you're right. Like, he is controlled, he is like friendly, but it's not implied to be any sort of mind control situation. I mean, maybe that gets brushed upon later on, but it does just seem like they call him for help and then he helps of his own free will, right?
Well, I did a little bit of research, and while this is never explored in the series itself, apparently the behind-the-scenes origin was that the research vessel of the Calico found Godzuki stuck in, like, a coral reef or something of that nature.
Okay.
And they rescued him, and Pete became friends with Godzuki, and so that's why Godzilla kind of follows them around, is because Godzuki follows them around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very peaceful.
Yeah. So, you know, I would be treating Godzuki a hell of a lot better, I would say, because Pete kind of has this energy of like, Godzuki, I'm going to have a long talk with you. But for right now, you're not allowed on the ship because you're so big that you tip it over.
Yeah, it is. He's a big dog.
Yeah.
Like, it is pet-like the way that they treat Godzuki and Godzilla, but pet-like in the way that I would argue pet-like, and this makes sense because the audience is kids, but I think that they're pet-like in the way that kids treat their pets, their, like, childhood pets, as kind of like, this is my friend who is a dog, rather than this is my pet dog that is, like, my child, but also is a dog, you know what I mean? Like, I think the relationship that you have, like, before my childhood dog died, when I was in college, my family got a puppy, so that when OG dog died, we wouldn't be completely devastated by the empty house. Like, we had a backup dog to sort of cushion the blow a little, you know?
Listen, I'm intimately familiar with the concept of the backup dog.
Yeah, of course, you gotta have the backup dog. Yeah, it's a good strategy. So, that dog, the way that I feel about that dog, I'm like, she is a little baby. We must take care of her. She is a sweet small child, you know, versus like my childhood dog Sparky. I did not think of him. Like, I remember once, like, one of my parents' friends or whatever being like, oh, you're like Sparky's mom. And I looked at them, I was like, what are you talking about? Because, like, I got him when I was 7, you know? I'm like, I'm not his mother. He's my buddy. He's my good time pal. He's my right-hand man. Like, this is my best friend who is also a dog. I don't have a paternal or maternal. I don't have like a parental relationship with this animal. You know, we are in many ways equal.
Okay.
Yeah.
But imagine if you had this dog, and also contingent on you treating this dog well was Clifford the carnivorous big red dog.
I would never think of mistreating my dog. So easy peasy. But he loved every moment that I put Build-A-Bear clothes on him. He tolerated every second of that because he loved me.
But that's what I'm saying. That's the dynamic of that should be the dynamic on the Calico research vessel. Like, if I was in that situation,
perhaps all of the adults are thinking that.
Like imagine if you tried to teach Godzuki like house training, or like Godzuki started like eating some of your food, and then you like kind of like swat him away with a newspaper, and then like as soon as the newspaper swat him, you just hear a rumbling underneath from his giant kaiju dad.
I mean, he's gigantic. I mean, he's probably more like handling like a horse or something, you know? He's such a large animal.
Mm-hmm.
And also seems to be quite intelligent, really.
To an extent, yeah.
What does he eat?
Godzuki?
Yeah.
Certainly not people.
What are they feeding him? Is he getting a balanced diet?
I imagine it's a lot of fish.
They're not feeding him rawhide, right? Like, that's not good for him. That could mess up his digestion.
They're on a big boat as a literal and metaphorical vehicle to go on adventures. So I imagine it's a lot of fish. And the occasional whale that Godzilla kills.
I'm thinking they're like sitting there. It's, oh, guys, look, a pod of whales. And they're like whale watching. And then suddenly, you know, the whales dive down and then it bobs up and it's all like bloody and floating. And then Godzuki is just like, hey, dinner! And jumps in and starts eating it.
Dr. Quinn is like, take Pete inside. What? Take Pete inside.
Dr. Quinn is she, what kind of doctor? Does it ever, I mean, obviously it's not discussed in the first episode. Is it ever clear what sort of doctor she is, or she's just whatever Hanna-Barbera needs her to be?
They mention geology.
Just as Godzilla is 30 stories tall, but also however large she needs to be.
They mention geology at one point, but I'm not sure if they're talking about like them, the Calico, or if they're talking about the scientists that they rescued off the volcano island.
Okay.
It could be either or.
Yeah.
But I think she is just supposed to be sort of regular doctor of science for whatever the monster of the week is. And
I love it.
She gets too absorbed in her work focusing on the lava and not on the wings.
Yeah. I love pulp stories so much. And perhaps Hanna-Barbera had a hand in that a little bit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But this is like such a pulp story. This is like a dime novel situation. Like, you have the manly captain pilot, the kid sidekick, a doctor, another character who is fulfilling the token black man. What are his other functions? He's there.
He's there.
So stop complaining.
He's there in the 70s.
Like... Okay, and that's about as far as we're going to dig into that, because I don't feel qualified to unpack all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, better than blackface, I guess.
Yeah. The other interesting thing, so, you know, the intro goes that Godzilla is 30 stories high. That is technically the largest Godzilla will be for quite a while. I think the only larger Godzilla is Godzilla Earth from one of the 2020s movies.
Okay.
But yeah, this Hanna-Barbera's Godzilla is technically the biggest Godzilla besides Godzilla Earth.
That can't be right.
At least from what I read. Hang on, I'll look this up right now. Godzilla height chart.
There's no way that's right. Wouldn't Godzilla, what is it? The 1998, like, New York Godzilla? He's gotta be ginormous.
No.
What?
The 1998 New York Godzilla is actually fairly small.
How tall is he?
Let's see. I'm pulling up the height chart right now.
He's gotta be at least 6 feet.
So let's see here. So 1998 Godzilla is 54 meters. What's that in American?
54 times 3. Like 170 feet?
177 feet.
Oh my god.
So he's actually... He's slightly bigger than the Showa Godzilla.
How many feet is 30 stories? Oh, shit. Son of a... Okay, so according to convertunits.com, 30 stories is 324 feet. That's 3 football fields. Talk about American. 3 football fields tall. That's quite tall.
Yeah.
What about Godzilla? What about, like, MonsterVerse Godzilla? He's gigantic. I've seen him in scale to a fighter plane in the trailers.
So MonsterVerse Godzilla, according to the height chart, is about 119.8 meters. That's about 390 feet. How much was 30 stories?
324 feet.
Oh, okay.
This is... Hold on.
Okay, so...
How tall?
So 2014 Godzilla was 100 meters, and then you got a 19 meter growth spurt between Godzilla 2014 and 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Okay, the Statue of Liberty... Oh my god! The Statue of Liberty, like just the statue, is 151 feet and 1 inch from the base of the statue to the tip of the torch.
Yeah.
From the ground to the torch, it's 305 feet. So this thing is taller than the Statue of Liberty from the ground to the torch.
When he's drawn that way.
When he's drawn that way, which he's not always drawn that way.
Sometimes his hand can fit a whole Godzuki, other times it can fit a whole research vessel.
I'm learning that I'm really bad at conceptualizing how tall 30 stories is, but I would like, in my defense...
You're short?
No! In my defense, I grew up in areas of the country that don't have mega tall skyscrapers.
I grew up near Indianapolis, so there's like some tall buildings there.
I don't think Phoenix has... I mean, there's some skyscrapers downtown, but like really not a lot, and they're all... I don't think that they're really that tall. You know, I grew up in suburbia, and then I moved to Los Angeles, which does have skyscrapers, but they're all downtown. Like, I don't go near those. What if a quake happens?
But it does go to show the Showa-era Godzilla was actually fairly small in terms of how we think of Godzilla, because the Showa-era was around, like, 160 feet or so, maybe a little bit more. And that was very tall in a Tokyo that didn't have skyscrapers. But in a Tokyo that does have skyscrapers, Godzilla going through a modern day Tokyo would actually kind of be like, this is still scary, but not as scary.
How tall is the Empire State Building? Okay, the Empire State Building is 1,250 feet. So it dwarfs Godzilla.
Yes.
Interesting.
If Showa Godzilla were to stand next to the Statue of Liberty, he would be shorter. That said, they do add 30 meters to his height in the Return of Godzilla, at least according to the size chart that I'm looking at.
I do remember seeing an infographic that compared original Godzilla in Tokyo in 1954 versus like 21st century modern day Tokyo. And he was so little in comparison to all of the buildings in modern day Tokyo. So, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of, it's very much how big we think he is in relation to the buildings around him is obviously played by, how completely different the skyline in Tokyo has been in the last 70 years. Also, I think the other thing, too, is when we think of giant movie monsters, I guess the other thing, too, like, because I haven't seen the modern Godzilla movies, my big thing is Pacific Rim. And they're fuck off huge in Pacific Rim.
Rim height chart.
They're gigantic.
Oh, by the way, actually,
Jaegers and the...
We're recording this in 2024, but when this episode comes out in 2025, it will be coming out in the Pacific Rim year.
Oh my god!
Pacific Rim takes place in the year 2025. We're in the future.
We will do... I remember that it started, the prequel I remember is 2013.
So Gypsy Danger is about 260 feet. So yeah, Gypsy Danger is bigger than Showa Godzilla.
Yeah.
But still smaller than Hanna-Barbera Godzilla.
That is wild. Only when Hanna-Barbera Godzilla is drawn that way.
Only when he's drawn that way.
We will do a Pacific Rim bonus episode. We'll let you guys know when that happens, but we will be doing it in the Pacific Rim year at some point. Probably not. I feel like we got some other things to get through before we finally get to it, but yeah,
we do have quite a bit more to get through, at least on the Godzilla road. We can do the Pacific Rim bonus episode whenever we want, but
yeah.
We have quite a bit more Godzilla to go through. Speaking of which, Kayla, what's the next film we're watching?
Next, we'll be watching The Return of Godzilla, 1984, also known as Godzilla, and Godzilla 1985, something that I'm sure will make sense when Kevin does the historical context. Be sure to watch the Japanese version, not the English version. If you like this podcast, be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, leave a comment, and share with a friend. Follow us on social media. We got the links in the show notes. We also have a Ko-fi. You can support us there and get access to cool bonus content like extra episodes and access to the private Discord where you can talk with other geeks about Godzilla and all things Digital Kaiju. Check it out. Gorilla Whale is a production of Digital Kaiju Studios. It is hosted and produced by Kevin Carpenter and Kayla Knudsen. Gorilla Whale has no official affiliation with Toho, Legendary, Hanna-Barbera, or any other companies associated with the Godzilla franchise. We thank you for watching along with us. Until next time, watch out for kaiju.
Watch out for kaiju.
Oh my god, we didn't rate it. 5 stars. 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
10 out of 10, Hanna-Barbera Godzilla.
Roll the credits. I mean the music.